Scott Anderson, Lawrence in Arabia, War, Deceit, Imperial, Folly, and the Making of the Modern Middle East. Embark on an enlightening journey through the intricate historical events that shaped the modern Middle East in Lawrence in Arabia, War, Deceit, Imperial, Folly, and the Making of the Modern Middle East by Scott Anderson. Delve deep into the life of T.E.Lawrence, the brilliant yet enigmatic figure pivotal to Middle Eastern affairs during World War I, alongside three other men, Kurt Prüfer, Aaronsohn, and William Yale, who all played significant roles in the region's tumultuous times. Anderson vividly paints a picture of the intrigue, deceit, and ambition that engulfed the region, ultimately sowing the seeds of many of the challenges the Middle East faces today.
The early years of Lawrence of Arabia. Thomas Edward Lawrence, the man known for his role in the Middle East during World War I, had a middle-class upbringing in Oxford, where he developed a passion for history, especially of Europe and Egypt. During his senior thesis, he embarked on a project to study the castles built during the Crusades in Syria. Impressed with his work, the staff at Oxford invited him to stay in the Middle East to assist in an archaeological dig. He worked in Carchemish, a border city of Turkey and Syria, for 3 years and became well-versed in Middle Eastern culture. Lawrence earned the respect of the locals, and his ability to lead and work long hours under the desert sun proved his capability. The world plunged into World War I during his time in Carchemish, and Lawrence's knowledge of the region and his ability to lead would prove essential. 3 men of note. This summary dives deep into the lives of 3 significant figures, Kurt Prüfer, Aaronsohn, and William Yale, and their roles in the political turmoil of Egypt and Palestine in the 1910s. Kurt Prüfer, a German spy working in the German embassy in Cairo, had plans of instigating a revolution by stirring up the Egyptian Muslims against the British Christians who ruled Egypt. With his love for foreign languages, he soon met influential people who shared his interests. However, he was fired from his embassy job in November 1913 by the British government, which Prüfer had not anticipated. Aaronsohn, a Jewish agronomist in Palestine, was building a research facility to make Palestine fertile and lush again while simultaneously trying to appeal to Western governments to support the Zionist cause. By this time, William Yale's family fortune had declined, and he was employed with Standard Oil to find new sources of oil in the Middle East. Together, these 3 men of note played significant roles in the political turmoil of Egypt and Palestine in the early 1910s. The decline of the Ottoman Empire. In 1913, 4 men noticed that the Ottoman Empire was in decline. The empire had lost territories and was filled with diverse populations, leading to instability. The rise of the Young Turks political party had formed a new government that struggled to maintain control. Led by the 3 Pashas, the weakened Ottoman Empire entered World War I, and ultimately aligned with Germany against the British and Egypt. War and the struggles in Palestine. The book tells the story of the struggles in Palestine during World War I. As the war broke out, the Allied powers and the Central Powers emerged, with the Ottoman Empire siding with the latter. Jews and Christians were stripped of weapons and taken into Turkish labor camps while the military plundered everything for use in the war effort. In the midst of all this, Aaronsohn refused to flee Palestine. Meanwhile, Lawrence's knowledge of the region and culture led to his appointment in the British Military Intelligence Office in Cairo. However, despite his advice, the British and French launched the Gallipoli campaign instead of striking at the Gulf of Alexandretta, leading to a massacre. Oil, war, and loyalty. William Yale finds himself in a challenging and deceitful situation when he secures drilling rights on 500,000 acres of land in Palestine, promising to drill for oil during World War I. On his way back to the U.S., he realizes he can use his connections for the Allied powers. Meanwhile, T.E.Lawrence grows frustrated with military incompetence and political interference in the Gallipoli campaign. As World War I breaks out, William Yale is tasked with securing drilling rights for Standard Oil on promising areas of land. Despite the war indefinitely pausing drilling plans, Yale finds a way to secure the rights to drill on 500,000 acres of land in Palestine from Jemal Pasha, without mentioning the fact that drilling will not happen until the war is over. Though Yale feels uneasy about the deceitful agreement, he remains loyal to his employer. On his way back to the US, he realizes that his connections and dealings in the Middle East can benefit the Allied powers. At the same time, T.E.Lawrence grows increasingly frustrated by the inefficiency and political interference in the Gallipoli campaign. He realizes that the decision to land in Gallipoli instead of Alexandretta was largely due to the French government's interests in securing post-war Syria for its own political ends. Lawrence's experience with military intelligence leaves him eager to make a more direct impact and do actual good outside of Cairo offices. The story highlights the challenges faced by individuals in war and the influence of politics and loyalty in decision-making. The Arab Revolt. In 1915, an Arab lieutenant surrendered to the British and revealed the Arabs' willingness to fight against the Turks. Negotiations between the Arabs and the British commenced, with King Emir Hussein wanting a guarantee of independence for Arab territories after the war. Lawrence served as a British liaison to Prince Faisal and his army, and the Arab uprising finally began on June 5, 1916. While in Europe, the Allied powers drafted the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which granted France, Britain, and Russia control over Arab territories. Lawrence and Faisal formed a close relationship, and Lawrence tried to undermine the British and French's betrayal of the Arabs throughout the war. Aronson's journey to becoming a wartime spy. Aaronsohn, a witness to the genocide of the Armenian population, becomes concerned about the Jewish population's safety. In an effort to help the Allied forces, he records the location and size of Turkish armies, depots, supplies, and undefended coastlines but needs to get this information to the British. After sneaking out of the Ottoman Empire, Aaronsohn was greeted with skepticism but ultimately became a British military intelligence operative. He organized a group of 24 Jewish operatives to act as spies, passing valuable information about Turkish troops until the group was caught in Palestine. Aronson's political gains for his Zionist movement continued with the British government issuing the Balfour Declaration, confirming support for the creation of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Lawrence's daring plan. In 1917, Lawrence shed his British uniform and clothed himself in Arab garments to help the Arab uprising. Knowing that the Arabs needed to capture land themselves to claim independence, he developed a plan to capture the Turkish fort in Aqaba. Rather than a traditional attack by boat, Lawrence led a small group of Arab soldiers to move inland through the Wadi Sirhan desert to capture the fort from behind. France was also planning a strike on Aqaba, so it was crucial for the Arabs to get there first. Meanwhile, Prufer, blinded by geographical isolation, failed to recognize the realities of the war. In his reports, he considered Jews docile and obedient, and the Arabs too cowardly to rise up against the Turks. Lawrence's daring plan helped the Arabs progress in the war. Lawrence's journey to conquer Aqaba. Lawrence of Arabia, after facing the brutal desert conditions on his way to Aqaba, began to doubt his efforts and felt overwhelmed with hopelessness due to the Sykes-Picot Agreement. However, upon meeting Arab tribal leader Amir Nuri Shalan, he was convinced to persevere. As they approached Aqaba, they encountered Turkish soldiers which led to Lawrence's first conflict, resulting in a swift victory. Finally, they reached Aqaba and claimed it with little resistance. Lawrence was recognized for his efforts, achieving the highest military honor. The capture of Aqaba became an important military base for future attacks. Lawrence's ambitions and horrors of war. Lawrence's military success leads to an ambitious plan that results in more violence and detachment from the horrors of war. Major Lawrence's military success brought him the only benefit he cared for, the respect of his superiors. Lawrence proposed a daring plan for a synchronized attack by the British Empire and Arab troops to take key cities of Damascus and Jerusalem, which was agreed by his superiors. However, a delay in movement and supplies made soldiers restless, resulting in more violence. On a mission to blow up a bridge and destroy a train, Lawrence's army opened fire, killing dozens of Turkish soldiers who tried to escape the train, as well as injuring many civilians, including women. Lawrence's detachment from the violence around him was evident when he tried to inspect a major railway complex in the Syrian town of Deira and was captured and held prisoner by the district governor. Lawrence claimed to have prevented the governor from raping him, later revealing that he was beaten and tortured before escaping from a hospital. While some people who knew Lawrence saw no signs of these beatings, they did notice a marked change in his demeanor. He was colder and even more detached from the horrors of war around him than before. U.S. intelligence in the Middle East. In 1917, the U.S. Bureau of Secret Intelligence sent William Yale to Cairo, making him the only U.S. intelligence agent in the Middle East. Based on his limited knowledge, Yale looked to British documents for assistance in understanding the situation. He then discovered the two men who knew most about the Middle East, T.E.Lawrence and Aaronsohn. While Aaronsohn attempted to convince the U.S. to declare war on Turkey and support his Zionist movement in Palestine, his spy ring collapsed, and his efforts were fruitless. Meanwhile, the U.S.'s interest in the Middle East waned due to a policy of anti-imperialism. Changing perspectives in the Middle East War. In 1918, different views of the war's outcome emerged. Prüfer believed Germany would triumph under Eastern Europe's strength, while Lawrence saw opportunities in Arab independence. Lawrence's efforts paid off, and Britain and France recognized Arab independence in June 1918. By the start of 1918, the two protagonists in this story held different views on how the conflict in the Middle East would unfold. Kurt Prüfer believed that the Russian Revolution of 1917 had given Germany an advantage due to the resulting withdrawal of Russia from the fight. He was even looking to win over Abbas Hilmi II, the former monarch of Egypt, to regain power after the war. However, his strategy proved to be futile as Germany's fortune dwindled in a matter of months. On the other hand, Yale's theory that Lawrence was a Middle Eastern expert was accurate. In March 1918, Lawrence met with Yale and shared his beliefs that the Arabs could lay claim to any land they took by force. He also expressed doubts about the feasibility of a Jewish state in Palestine. Lawrence's efforts to speak out against the Sykes-Picot Agreement eventually led to the recognition of Arab independence by Britain and France in June 1918. The contrasting views of Prüfer and Lawrence remind us of how different perspectives can shape outcomes. Despite the odds against him, Lawrence's efforts towards Arab independence paid off, and he gained recognition and support for his cause. T.E.Lawrence's final challenge. In September of 1918, T.E.Lawrence embarked on his final mission that would involve leading his troops alongside the Arabs against the Turks and the Germans. The situation, however, did not begin well as his troops bore witness to a horrific scene of dead bodies, which angered Lawrence and spurred them into action. Although they eventually arrived at Damascus and were greeted with celebrations, Lawrence was faced with the challenge of establishing an Arab government while dealing with the Turkish hospital's nightmarish scene. Unfortunately, Lawrence's efforts were in vain, as the British and the French ultimately went ahead with the Sykes-Picot Agreement's terms, which redrawn borders, leaving Syria landlocked, and making Prince Faisal its administrator under French guidance. Despite his 2 years of dedication to securing Damascus's independence, T.E.Lawrence left the city stunned, never to return. The Unsettled Aftermath. It was not until January of 1919 that the decisions affecting the Middle East were made official at the Paris Peace Conference. This left Lawrence and Yale advocating for Arab independence during the interim period. Lawrence pleaded for Faisal Hussein's leadership without interference from the French, but was barred from the proceedings. Meanwhile, Yale presented his Yale Plan for Sustainable Peace and Independence to the U.S. representatives, but it was disregarded. At the conference, the Middle East was divided between British-controlled Iraq and Palestine, and French-controlled Syria. In 1946, the French abandoned Syria, leaving behind a civil war. The British were likewise ousted from Egypt and Iraq. The imperialized lands harbored resentment against Britain for years to come. The Paris Peace Conference marked the prologue of the 20th century tragedy.
In the end, the intricate web of deceit, ambition, and imperial meddling explored in Lawrence in Arabia led to the convoluted state of the modern Middle East. Despite T.E.Lawrence's efforts and the actions of other key players like Kurt Prüfer, Aaronsohn, and William Yale, the peace conferences and international agreements that followed World War I only served to deepen the region's long-standing issues. The book demonstrates the far-reaching consequences of Western intervention and the colonial powers' disregard for the local population's aspirations for independence. Lawrence in Arabia offers a profound and eye-opening exploration of how the past laid the foundation for the present-day complexities of the troubled Middle East.